When it comes to management styles, there are three values that are super important to me, but also really influential to the way that I manage my classroom, my time, and my personal responsibilities in general. And those values are relationships. I think that people are super important. Making sure that I have a foundation of relationship with people really influences the way that I carry out all of these responsibilities as a staff member and just as a person in general. So making sure that I create relationships and then also continue to support them in a meaningful way. The second thing is consistency. I think that whenever you are consistent, people have a lot more faith in you, and they're also willing to give more grace when things are not working out well. And so just making sure that as a teacher and a coworker, I'm showing up with consistency, consistent support, consistent expectations, all of those things. And then lastly, being open to change, being open to feedback, being open to new things, I think is really important. And so, I think that those three values kind of sum up the way that I approach management in general. When it comes to classroom management, it's super important to continue to be growing and learning and improving. And the way that I feel like I am most able to grow is through observing other people. There's a lot of really amazing staff members at University Academy that anytime I'm able to observe them interacting with their students or observe the way that they do things, I feel like I'm able to learn so much and adapt it to fit my personal needs and my students. And so getting to go into classrooms and observe teachers, going to watch those presentations, slowing down in the hallway and listening to other teachers as they're interacting with their students. Allison Dawson, I think, is the most influential teacher at our school. For me, every time I see her with her students, I am just floored with how amazing she is at her job, but then also things that I'm able to take away from her and implement into my classroom. She's definitely one that I'm constantly just trying to observe as much as I can. And so, I think that that's the most effective way for me to improve classroom management and has proven to be super helpful for me. But then also making sure that I'm checking in for feedback. This year I sent out surveys to parents, and those that did respond, I found helpful to know what they liked about what we were doing, what we could do differently, what we should keep the same. Their perception of this year was super helpful. Another way that I'm able to get feedback is I will check in with my team. I'll check in with Kelly and others just to see what's working for you guys from the outside looking in. What are ways that you think I could do this better? Best practices from their experience. But just checking in and getting that feedback and asking questions. I try to stay open to feedback in general, and I think that observing and feedback is just been such a helpful thing for my classroom management. The way that I manage my classroom, again, starts with relationships. I build individual relationships with all of my students, and my relationship with each student is unique, and I try to stop and listen and get to know them and seek first to be to understand, then to be understood. And I really try to do that with my students. I really try to get to know them. The second thing that I do is that I try to give clear expectations. I want students to know exactly what I want from them, but then I also follow up with consistent accountability, making sure that they know this is what's expected of me, and this is what's going to happen if I don't do it. No matter what day of the week it is, no matter if Miss Greer is watching or not, this is what I need to be doing. And I know that I need to do it because if I don't, I know what's going to happen. And not to say that as like I'm some crazy authority, but I do think that them knowing that Tuesday or Friday, it doesn't matter. I still have to do what's right because that's what it is expected of me. That consistency and accountability is what makes the difference in our team. I'm really proud of the way that my team has worked together to help our students grow in this area because we have been so clear in our expectations, but then also followed through with accountability. And so I'm really proud of that. But that's also really important to me within just my classroom, making sure that I have clear expectations and consistent accountability. This year we used folders to track behavior across our team, and that was helpful in communicating what was going on in the parents, but also documenting things so that we were able to look back and see if there was a pattern somewhere, if there was something we could do differently, those sorts of things. Also communicating through band. Did try to make positive phone calls and sending emails as well. But just having that open dialogue with parents, making sure students know that parents and I are on the same team. We're going to talk. We all know what's going on. Having that united front was important as well and is important. When it comes to my personal time management, I really try to use all of the time that I have and maximize it to the best of my ability. I try to use my conference time and that after school time to be working, to be planning, getting those things done, making sure that I'm not just socializing on my off time. I really do try to maximize that time to make sure that I'm able to get everything prepared and ready. Another thing that I felt was really helpful with my time management this year was building a calendar that had each of the units on the calendar and just seeing it. I think it's just because I'm a visual person, but having a calendar hanging that showed here's the next couple of weeks, here's what each unit looks like in comparison to each term and all that kind of stuff was really helpful for me this year. Just kind of adapting that scope and sequence to a calendar so it looks more concrete on that calendar was super helpful, like I said. There's definitely room for me in the area of organization inside of my classroom. I think students know where everything is and they're able to find everything, but there are times with all of the projects going on that I think this is something that I could improve in. But overall, I do try to keep an organized area. It just kind of gets out of control sometimes when you got 3 different PBLs going. But yeah, overall, I think that I keep an organized classroom. I try to grade things on time and keep papers organized or assignments organized. Student engagement, the way that I try to manage student engagement, again, clear expectations, making sure they know what I need from them or want from them, and then consistent accountability. But past that, I try to offer my students an enjoyable and engaging learning experiences like every day or as much as possible. I try to create lessons that I know will make a personal connection to the content. That's an experience, like I said, but also creating units that are congruent so that they know ahead of time there's going to be a pre-assessment, then there's going to be a launch, then we're going to do some workshops that might include labs or stations or observations or whatever. We're going to have a playlist online and I better get it done by the end of the unit, but I can work at my own pace. Vocabulary, claim evidence reasoning. We're going to have a unit assessment and then we're going to present our PBL. I try to keep it the same and just change the content throughout the year so that students aren't constantly like overwhelmed and trying to figure out instructions or expectations. Overall, I think that they knew going into a unit or going into a day about what was going to happen. While we do have exciting days in my classroom, I don't think there were days where it was just like, oh my gosh, this is all brand new and I don't know what's going on. Overall, they had clear expectations. Lastly, a way that I was able to engage my students and get them on task this year is setting benchmark goals and giving them the incentive of meeting their goal. I think that was super helpful. So goal tracking and making sure that they knew where they were and where they wanted to be really gets students engaged. And when you cheer on their success or their growth, I think that they buy in a little bit more and they take a little bit more ownership whenever they are setting the goals and they are earning those incentives. And so that's another way that I feel like I was able to maximize engagement this year. As far as my management of relationships with other people, I think that overall I do a good job with this. I'm not perfect, and so there's definitely ways that I could grow. And there were things that I learned this year about how to grow in this area. But overall, I think that I do consistently bring a positive disposition to the workplace. I try to facilitate those meaningful relationships and be supportive and check in with people and have like genuine dialogue with most of my coworkers and my students and parents. And so again, just different things that I was able to do, different acts of kindness for staff members and students, positive calls home, positive messages home, celebrating student success, celebrating those birthdays with them, having those parties, getting parents in, doing fun activities. Another thing that I do is I go to my students' like sporting events or concerts as much as possible. Obviously, I don't hit all of them, but I think that means a whole lot to students whenever you show up for them outside of school. So I try to do that as much as possible as well. Lastly, I'll say it again, visibility, making sure that that I'm just present, that I don't miss a lot of school, that in the hallways I'm talking to every scholar, whether they're mine or not, interacting with all people, going out to the pickup line, talking to all the parents, taking those students to their cars and praising that student to their parent right there in front of them, that face-to-face interaction, but then also having that interaction with my coworkers on purpose. Comic book club, that was intentional. Making sure that I'm building those bonds with students that I don't have yet, but will have, getting them excited about being in my classroom. Overall, I think that visibility or like building those relationships across campus is super important, but it's also something that I've done pretty well, whether it's kindergartners or seniors. I've not been secluded to just third, fourth, and fifth graders. I am reaching out to all people, trying to make all people feel seen and heard. And I think that has a lot to do with the way that I'm able to manage across the board. And then lastly, parent communication, like I said, emails, positive calls home, the band app, our folders, pickup line. That was not a duty that I was assigned to, but I'm really glad that I kind of stepped into it. Being able to have that interaction with parents face to face on a daily basis, them seeing me interacting with their kids, but then their kids also seeing me interact with the parents, kind of turned out to be super cool, which is something that the lower elementary teachers do. And so I kind of figured out their secret this year. What else? Oh, also communicating data, making sure parents know where their students are, whether it's grades, progress reports, benchmark data, like I said. Just making sure that I am valuing relationships, that I'm building relationships, facilitating relationships in a supportive way across the board, not just in my team or my classroom. Being consistent, and then also making sure that I'm open to change and open to new things. Yeah, that kind of sums up my management style as a whole.